Okay, you're live. It reminds me of a story. At 7:30, I was on my way here.
Oh my God!
I was going to be early. I was thinking, what am I going to do for half an hour? I'll prepare. I'll get to know the people, and then an emergency arose. So it reminds me of a story, and so we're starting a little late. Rabbi Shmuel Munkus, his wife once asked him to go buy a bottle of milk.
Wow.
So he goes out and he sees Chassidim are going. He sees a pilgrimage. So he follows the Chassidim. And they're going to the Rebbe to hear Chassidus. Anyway, a couple of days later, he comes back home and he reminds himself that he was supposed to go out for milk.
A couple of days.
Yeah. So he's running with the milk and he falls. In those days, the milk was made out of glass, like in Chabad. It was a glass bottle, a glass jug with the cream on top. So he falls on the steps on the way upstairs to his apartment, and he breaks the bottle of milk. And he tells his wife, "You see what happens when you rush." After Gimel Tammuz, I was writing articles in the newspaper. So I called different people to see if I can get some new material. You could think that there's missing material. There's enough material out there. But I was looking for a scoop. So I called the Rebbe's secretaries, Rabbi Chadakov, Rabbi Krinsky, Rabbi Groner, Rabbi Klein, those who are alive at Selangayar. And I remember Rabbi Krinsky at that point, I said to him, maybe you could tell me something that the Rebbe said that we don't know, that hasn't been published yet. He says, I'll tell you a word. I don't know if it's been published, but I'll tell you a word that I heard from the Rebbe. And this was a post-Gimel Tammuz word. And he said like this. It says in Shema, in the second Parsha, it says, V'hoyim Shemoya Tishmu. You know that piece of Shema?
Yeah. In
there it says, if Chas v'Sholem, you don't follow, so there's a whole bunch of consequences. And it starts off, Avadatem Mehera. You have to, in Halach it says that those words, B'chol Levavcha. You have to make a little pause. Avadatem Mehera. It's two words. So he said he heard from the Rebbe a Chassidische Taich. A word in the Avadatem Mehera is talking about the consequences that if Chas v'Sholem we don't do what we're supposed to do, then the fields won't grow and we'll lose everything. Avadatem. He said the Rebbe types differently. Avadatem mehera means those two words are a lesson. Vavadatem mehera, you have to lose. Vavadatem, make lose the speed, the rush. There's two things. There's alacrity, which in Hebrew is called zizis. That means being alert, being conscious, being awake, nicht verschlafen, right? Not being a zombie. They say the light is on, but nobody's home, right? Yes. But then there's haste. A lot of times, hastiness is not the best, right? Haste makes waste. You're only allowed to run out of Shabbos, l'mashal. Ratzon l'dvar mitzvah. Out of Shabbos, you're allowed to run. But b'chlal, it's two different types of running. There's a guy who takes his daily dallies. That's not called. That Vavadatem mehera means that ich bin nicht da, nicht dort. You're not here, you're not there. Okay, so B'meila, we're going to look at this week's Parsha in the Chassidische Parsha. And we want to wish Moshe a happy birthday. We'll save that part for Brengen. So if you want to jump to Veshalach. Unfortunately, I told you last time when I taught from these booklets, it's made though for such a time when you're breaking bottles of milk, so if you don't have a chance to go sifting through the Sfarim, the Torah, I put together this booklet for my son's chasana. Literally an hour before the chasana, I'm still sitting and typing it. My wife says, maybe you're going to come to the wedding. This was for the wedding. And I'm sitting. So you'll note that, first of all, there's a few problems. It has no page numbers for that reason. Because I was still in the middle. I was hoping I'd fix it next time. So there's no page numbers, but if you go in the orders of the Parshas, you'll find Veshalach right over here. It's a small little piece. The goal I write in the Nagdam is not Chas v'Sholem to cut and paste the Maimonim from the Torah, the Likutei Torah, because they're too long. That would be a chutzpah. Who am I? But to give you a taste, it's a sampling. I hope if somebody reads a few lines of Torah the way I quote it, he'll go and look for the source. Another thing, if you really study this booklet, it's missing a whole chumash. It goes because we were going to lead my son to the chuppah, we missed Dvarim. But hopefully we'll still complete the project. Okay, so in Veshalach there's a maimer, and the focus of these citations, of these quotes from the Torah and the Torah are especially when it comes to davening, because I found after teaching Likutei Torah and Torah for many years and learning it as a shir before that one of the best takeaways is davening. The Alter Rebbe almost never fails to translate what he's teaching us, even though it's academic, it's Chabad, it's intellectual, cold, cool, and collected, calm, cool, and collected. Like a computer, but the Poel, our Moyach and our Lev are not two separate worlds. They have a hashpah on each other, one way or another. So most of the Maimonim have a sachakol, they have a takeaway, a summary, which is usually davening. So I decided to focus on taking pieces of Torah and Torah that talk about davening. So the prayer that this Maimed focuses on is that we say Eimrim B'Yira Kodesh, and the subtitle is Milas Tfilas Nefashis Yisrael, the greatness of the prayers of a Yid who are enclosed in a guf, when you compare it, by contrast to how malachim say Kaddish. We all know Kedusha, Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. Hine Inyan ha'Allah asman. Man, by the way, I try to decipher most of the Shatevas. Sometimes it slips through. Is our Shatevas for the words Mayin Nukvin. This is a mashal for a husband and a wife. There's the feminine energy and the masculine energy. When it comes to Hashem and the Bnei Yisrael, our work is like the spouse. We're like the woman because we're mekabel. We're men and women and children, but in the bigger picture, on the global scheme, Hashem is the man, so to speak, like a mashal. The whole concept of marriage is really Hashem and us. It comes down into individual families. Sahalah Asman, Mayin Nukvin and Mayin Duchrin. One is, they're both Aramaic. Nukvin is Nekeva, the urge, the passion, the energies of a woman, which is us. When we daven, we're offering our love to Hashem. And Mayin Duchrin, this is when Hashem gives us health and gives us parnasa and gives us a child with pastrami and our beautiful friends. That's Mayin Duchrin. These are the blessings that Hashem responds. And many times, one follows after. Hashem made it, and said he could have done it the first time he did it. It was on his own. There was no initiator. But now that we're here, it's a partnership. It doesn't work that Hashem just tosses us Nama, the Chsuf, it's called, which is easy come, easy go. Not earned it. You didn't earn it. It's easy. If you come to a king, you come to a great person, and you want to make him happy, you want to please him, you want to show him how much you appreciate what he does for you. What do? You bring him a matana. How do you get the king's attention? You bring him something new, something unique, something out of the ordinary, out of the box. So that he should turn. He has a lot of things on his mind. He should turn to your request. You want to get his attention. You know the joke? I don't know if we should say it online. The joke. There was a donkey, and the donkey wouldn't move. So the farmer, he offered a $200 reward. If you move my donkey, you get $200. There's only one tonight. You're not allowed to touch the donkey. He's a very sensitive donkey. You could talk to him. He has big ears. You can scream at him. You can jump in front of him. You can go under him. But you cannot touch him. And everyone tries. Er rückt sich nicht. Er sitzt wie ein Esel. Yeah, a donkey. A chamor. You know a chamor? A Jew shows up, a smart Jew, and he's carrying a 2x4. You know what a 2x4 is? 2x4 is a piece of wood. That's not exactly 2x4 inches, but that's what they call it for some reason. 2x4. And he walks up to the donkey, he whispers in the donkey's ear, and he gives the donkey such a zetz auf den Plätze. You know what another word for donkey is? He gives the donkey a slap on the part of the donkey that we call a donkey. You know that word? It's Rosh Hashanah Ein Sof. So, and he goes to collect his money. So the owner, the farmer, says to him, "You're not allowed to touch him." He says, "I whispered to him." He says, "But you hit him with a." That was just to get his attention. I told him to move. I told him what to do. The board had nothing to do with it. But that's just a milsa de bedichuse, the bedichusa, as they would say. So he says, you bring the king. He's on a different level, and you're melech pasada. You're down here. So you bring him something, a davar chadash. Davar chadash. When you bring the king something new, something unique, something a little bit of a surprise. That's why surprises are so exciting. People like the thing that it's wrapped up, it's packaged. What does that do to the king? Mamshech leiv hamelech. The king becomes warm. He warms up to you because you caught his interest. That's interesting. K'moi, for example, what would be a chiddush? Tzipar hamedaberes. You all know a parrot talks, doesn't make a lot of sense usually. Although in the news recently, they had that a parrot ordered peanuts from Alexa.
Oh, okay.
Alexa had the credit card charge and everything. He listened to his boss, and he ordered I don't know how many peanuts, but he ordered peanuts, and it really came through. That's what they say. I didn't check the story. Akaponim, but most birds are not very intelligent as far as their speech is concerned. They can repeat your words. I went to put up a mezuzah once by a guy, an actor. So he says, "Hello, Rabbi. Hello, Rabbi. Hello, Rabbi." And the parrot right away copied him. He says, "Kiss the mezuzah. Kiss the mezuzah. Kiss the mezuzah. Goodbye, Rabbi. Goodbye, Rabbi. Goodbye, Rabbi." I heard him while I'm walking out the door. And it's very, very funny. It's exactly as the Mashal describes. So what happened? We're still going to see what happened to the king. Yeah. Yeah. Don't be fast. I've had the 10 naheda. Till 9:15. 9:15 is Maidav, right? Yeah.
So
I love these shows that have solar clocks, but they're off by a minute. You know why? Because that's
time
South.
zones.
That's South Carol, and this is North Carol. The satellite has it by the centimeter. You know, here, that's a minute ahead of us because North is ahead. Go ahead, yeah.
So Harvey Lane, you said he did some work for somebody, they couldn't pay him, so they gave him an African gray. So they're like two African gray is a big parrot like this.
A parrot, yeah.
African gray, it's called. You look it
Sure.
up. And it's $2,000 to $2,500, whatever.
Really colorful.
So we used to have a share in this house like 8 a.m. in the morning.
Really?
So I come in one time and I hear the voice. Harvey, that's the name. Harvey. I thought it was his wife. I get up, he said, got a big cage. And all of a sudden, you see the bird goes, good Shabbos. Jesus Christ. It was hysterical.
We had a parakeet.
And it whistled too. It was hysterical.
We had a parakeet. Parakeets don't talk a lot. A little bit. They can copy you, but it takes much longer, and it's not like a parrot. David Raskin, Alav Shalom, came to talk to my father, something in the Algemene, either Tzach or the Rambam. And while he was waiting for my father, he saw the parakeet. He heard the parakeet bird chirps whenever someone, especially a stranger, walks in. It chirps and chirps and chirps, and you chirp back to it. It's a whole process. So he tried to teach it the 12 psukim. He tried to teach it the Mevtzoyim. I said, David, you're asking for too much. It's a kleine Fegel. Nicht a große Fegel. He says, Ufaratsta kann die sagen? I said, ein Wort. Nicht 12 psukim, nicht Mevtzoyim, just ein Wort. He says, Ufaratsta. that showed me another thing. I told it to his kids, not just a joke. A chassid has to have a mantra. What's my word? If you could one word that you're going to teach a parrot, what is it going to be? He was going to teach the bird ufaratzta. He was one track minded. He says to me once, he was very, very sick. David says to me, Avram is given a tankist. By him, everything is tankist. A tankist. How do you know Avram Avinu was a tankist? The whole idea of tankist started in the 70s. Not in the 5th century, before the Common Era.
1970s.
Yeah. I said, weiß nicht. He says to me, was steht Holach v'neseya anegba. Say it in Tanya. Avram Avinu was always on the move. He was a tankist. I'll get back to the Maimon in a second. But there was one more quick story about tankist. They were making a parade. So he calls the butcher shop in Borough Park, Avram Aaron's son. Avram Aaron's his son is Yitzchak. Yossi Rabashkin works on 13th Avenue. They used to have I think they still have a butcher before the restaurant.
Oh.
No, the restaurant was one. There's two things. There's the butcher shop and the restaurant. It's
14th Avenue.
13th Avenue.
It was 13th.
They moved it.
13th.
Maybe the butcher shop was on 14th.
I don't know. I was 13th.
You're right.
The restaurant
was on 13th. It closed. And on 14th. On 14th. Oh, is it co-sponsored by the Rabashkin? Anyway, they had a butcher shop. So he calls him up. He says, "Medav haben macht a parad tankisten. Drive a tank." He says, "I'd love to drive a tank, but I'm working. I can't." He says, "We need to drive a tank back and forth." He keeps telling them, "I'd love to drive for you, but I can't." He says, "But salami for the tankisten. We need salami sandwiches. Salami kannst du zustellen?" He says, "Yeah, wie viel salami du willst?" So he ordered, those big wholesale salamis, the rolls. He said, "As much salami as you want." So right before David hangs up, he says, "So lang gesweist." So lang gesweist. The whole phone call was to get sliced salami. So you don't call a guy and say, "Hello, you have sliced salami for free?" You start, you ask for north, and you end up at least with south. Okay, let's go back to the bird. So listen to the mashal. The mashal is very interesting. By introducing a something innovative, something new, something out of the ordinary, it's called a novelty. You catch the king's attention. If I brought you a minister who knows geometry, who knows astronomy, who knows zoology, botany, he can make sense. Wouldn't the king appreciate that much more than a bird that just hacks a chinik and just repeats words? Polly wants a cracker. So he says people speak with much more intelligence. And yet, but there's something about a bird that supersedes even an intelligent person. It's had a chiddush because it's unusual. It's out of the ordinary. That a bird should talk. This is how you bring forth and arouse the king of the heart of kings. Without a limit. He opened. It's like opening all the doors. So that the hedyot, the normal, the simple person, the mortal, should be able to ask what he wants. How do you open the door from the king? By bringing him the bird. Because this is all we want to bring out. We want to bring out we want it with Talmuds, no? Oh, you're right. We want to bring out the difference between the malachim who chant Kedusha all day and all night. I'll soon tell you a word from the Maggid. And a Yid, he comes in, he chaps a asher, he says, this breaks all the barriers. What's the word? The Alter Rebbe says, Lachein halos man, mayin nukvin. Toli b'selusid dilatata. When a person initiates an arousal, an awakening from below, daika nefashis Yisrael because a Yid has the limitations of being in a body. He has minutes, he has time, he has a schedule, he has deadlines, he's rushing, he has worries, and yet he tears everything aside and he focuses on davening for the amount of time that he's able. This creates a tremendous chiddush by Hashem. Malachim, that's what they do. That's all they do. That's their career. That's their life's career for all time. Some malachim are thousands of years. You'll soon hear the word. Even though the malachim, the angels, they stand in the highest levels, the tamid, and they're constant. From the beginning of time. You'll learn in Chassidus, there's different types of malachim. Some malachim expire, they burn up. Some of them are born anew from our prayers, from good deeds, and some are from forever. Without any interruption. What do they say? B'yira, with awe, with pachad, with trepidation. Kodesh. Gam b'das yosi daberu. They speak with greater knowledge. A malach is bottled to Hashem. He doesn't have the limitations of a body. His body is mostly ear. They have bodies, but it's like clouds. It's water and air. We are mostly afar, even though 80% of a person is water. But there's so much dirt, there's so much doimim that the heaviness, the weight, especially in Shabbos and his esekoiches, it makes the person like a rock. Where a malach doesn't have any of that. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu argued with it in the sugya of Matan Torah. You have a Yetzirah. You went to Mitzrayim. You have parents. You steal. You get lusty. None of that. So you need a Torah. The Torah is for people that's stuck in a body. Their comprehension is awesome, is great. And great, and they pleasure in Hashem. They enjoy. They have the ecstasy of understanding God because they're close to Him. They live in His neighborhood, so to speak. Le'en kates without an end. When you come down here and to any person, and here the Alter Rebbe is talking personally to all of us on our level. That the Alter Rebbe understands where we are, where a human being is. Like he writes in Akdama and Tanya. We'll talk about it by the Fabrengen. We have a lot of thoughts. Zodas doesn't mean bad. It means not where they have to be. They're wrong. You're thinking about davening while you're learning. You're thinking about learning while you're davening. You're thinking about work while you're playing. You're always somewhere else. It's called multitasking. Women are very good at it. Men should not do it. And Torah days, and they bother you. Torah means that you're constantly worried. You're worried. It's different than a malach. A malach doesn't have his biggest worry is how to fly from here to Australia with Zoom. And not only are they constantly bothering you, and they're from far out, they're from outfield. And they bother you, they worry you, but they also bring you down. Mapiloi, slave ha'adam. They bring down the person. The gam ha'ahava, and the little bit of love that you wake up, that you arouse. I have love, Shema Yisrael. I realize how great Hashem is. I realize how great Hashem gave me a home. He gave me a family. He gave me a world. I have love for Him. So the little love that you have, also you lose. Because the machshavas, like a raging river. It passes and switches. We don't keep the ahava. It doesn't last long many times. And sometimes there's an interruption to your ahava. The ahava is to a certain degree. The Rebbe once said that he was in Germany, and he asked what time it is. When are going to daven? They said bald eine minute. The yekas, everything is by the minute. If you look at the Mamash 801 is and how long did you go Mesiras Nefesh for? Bald eine minute. By Krishma, you have to go Mesiras Nefesh. How long did you go Mesiras Nefesh? For a minute. So it lasts only a certain amount of time. So what's so great about it? We just described how great the Malachim is. And now you're comparing it to a person. Because of the wonder because of the novelty. This power that a person down here, as we mentioned before, I always say that it's stuck in a New York minute, especially in 2020.
Oh yeah.
Especially in this, I don't want to say that word that you keep hearing in the news. It starts with kuf. I don't want to say that word because it's just saying it drives you nuts. Imagine a yid stuck in such a minute. To get that koyach, how do I get the koyach to speak? From a physical world, from cholent, from pastrami. And if you don't eat for 3 days, this is very good for people with eating disorders. You become weak. You can't daven, you can't talk, you can't communicate. You don't have the power to speak well and comfortably and clearly. And kalmanis and other obstacles shatoli begashmis that are also depending on how much physicality and how much materialism you have. You shouldn't be cold, you shouldn't be hot. Other conditions. Malachim don't have that problem. Human beings have it. It's too hot, it's too cold. You can't get the right temperature. And it doesn't let you think, it doesn't let you daven, it doesn't let you do what you want to do. The speech of a person that lives down here in the physical world with conditions, with all kinds of conditions and all kinds of changes, that he gets that chayis, he gets that life from physical things. Yakar means it's valuable. It's like a gem, like a jewel. It's a treasure. It's a treasure. It's very treasured. If I could translate Yakar Ma'id, it's very special. Be'eni Hashem, in the eyes of Hashem. Kamashal tzipar anal, unlike the mashal of the bird, as mentioned before. I want to add that when the Alter Rebbe brings the same mashal, he adds sometimes another whole story that the king was depressed. Doesn't say it here because he doesn't want to discuss Hashem as if Hashem is stuck in moods. But it's kedai to paraphrase or to cross-reference. The Alter Rebbe says the king was depressed, so they brought him a musician. The musician couldn't cheer him up. Like Veshalach Melech, David would play when he was depressed. So they brought in mathematicians, like he mentions here, chachamim, people who can talk great wisdom. Doesn't help. They brought the jester, a clown, with a dunce cap, who was jumping and doing acrobat. Didn't help. They brought everything that they can. Nothing helps. Those people who kill the animals, what are they called? Gladiators. They brought gladiators. Gornish girlfriend. A depressed king is going to be a depressed country. You can imagine the next war we have to fight. Finally, a yidel shows up with a bird. A tzipur midaberes, some of the Alter Rebbe says. They start laughing him out of the palace. He says, I'm going to heal the king. I'm going to cure the king. How? With the talking bird. But the ministers talk much more intelligent. He brings that part the same, which is the malachim. But the bird makes the king loses it. He starts laughing so hard that he snaps out of his whole melancholy. What happened here? The Alter Rebbe says, the novelty that a yid is stuck in Elam Haza, and yet he stops to daven. This excites Hashem. This gives Hashem happiness. It's something to think about when we go daven. The Frierdiker Rebbe says that you all know the 3 prayers. The shachas you could do before you work. Mincha in the summertime you could do it after work. I might have, but during the winter mincha you have to do it in the middle of the day. Yeah. So the Alter Rebbe says everyone, not the Alter Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe says everyone knows the mincha is called Mesiras Nefesh for that reason. Because you stop in the middle of the day, whatever you're doing, and you go daven. But the Frierdiker Rebbe adds is one part of the Mesiras Nefesh that people don't realize what that is. Mesiras Nefesh is not once you close your computer, your email, the conversation with your boss or your sales or your customer, or wherever you are that you have to stop for a few minutes. Your cleaners, whatever business you're in, a plumber stops his monkey business. That's not the Mesiras Nefesh, because at that point you stop. I'm going to put my books away and I'll come back. And I tell you a second, I'll be back. You know the story of Shmuel David.
What's the Mesiras Nefesh?
Wait a minute. And a Mendel put the font. This you got to hear. and if Shmuel Menachem Shmuel David Reitzik go to fundraising. They go to a guy and he's busy, so they sit down in the waiting room and they tell the secretary they're going to wait. Tell the secretary they're going to wait, and they fall asleep. And the balabosk, the gavir comes out, doesn't want to wake up two altar men, so he leaves a check on the table. He tells the secretary when they wake up, tell them I couldn't stay, and I gave them something. I hope it's good enough. They open the check. It's much more than they would have asked for. So they turn to each other. They say, "Wo geht mein Morgenschlaf?" Where are we going to sleep tomorrow? Because it's like, you give kapecha. You don't have to worry. So you tell your secretary, I'm going to be back in 10 minutes. I'm going to daven mincha. Yeah. Some people daven mincha in the office. They don't even leave the office. But let's say you tell you so. That's not the Mesiris Nefesh said the figure. Figure ever writes in a sikha. The Mesiris Nefesh is that while you're working, a few minutes before you tell your secretary you got, a few minutes before you close the email, a few minutes before you finish with the customer, in your mind you think to yourself, "Oi, daven mincha." That oi, that's the Mesiris Nefesh. Why? Because what we mentioned before, multitasking. While you're working, you're also thinking about Hashem. While you stopped working and now you're going to mincha, stop from Yitzchak's karbonis, the vash the hand, the stanagatl. But while you're working, you go, oi, that urge, that's the tzipah medaberes. Where do we get that koyach from? I have a Rav. I said to him, Shachis by me is pretty well. Ma'ariv is also pretty well. But mincha I'm a little schwach with a minyan meretach. He says, which tefillah are you strong with? Instead of focusing on my weakness, I said, Shachis is my best prayer. 6 out of 7 days, I daven Shachis properly. What's the other day? We're not going to talk about that now. He says, so focus on where you're strong. And that strength will pour over into where you're mincha. And sure enough, stop focusing on where you're shvach. So that's the Alter Rebbe's word by Negei Mincha. You wanted to say something?
Who is the other Shmuel Rashik with who?
Mendel Futzefas. We'll get my Morgan Schlaf. So that's the Nekode over here. When I got married,
I will tell you before we mentioned about the salami. Sorry, it reminded me when I was in where was it? No, Levichik's in Kazakhstan. When I was in Kazakhstan, so Almaty, yeah. So I think it was Shapira from Florida was bringing label. So he was saying that in the beginning, when they were sending people to Russia, in the very, very beginning, so they came in front of the Rebbe and they had a bottle of mashka, and they wanted to bring a bottle of mashka with them to be. It was before Purim, so they wanted to be mismeach. So they wanted to bring. The Rebbe said, you go into a place that's mole mashka, and you're bringing mashka. They're gonna look at you and something is wrong. So you're doing something, little monkey business. Better to bring salami. This is what the Rebbe said, and that's reminding me. Better to bring salami. They brought salami by the customs. They had with them mezuzahs and tefillin. Salami they took. They let everything, and they took the salami. The Rebbe had the insight to bring salami, so they should distract.
In Rosh Salami is very
possibly.
You know what happened once in Afghanistan in the 50s? They needed matzah for Pesach. So Mecca sent, the Rebbe sent Bogomilsky from New Jersey, Shmuel Pesach, I think his name is, with suitcases, and he had no clothes, he had nothing. He had only matzahs. What am I going to do when I get there? It was completely illegal. He comes to the guy. He opens up one of the suitcases. He sees matzahs. He takes one of the matzahs and he puts it up in the light to check it. The matzahs have little holes in them. He says, "Okay, you can go." He's bringing matzahs into Afghanistan. With the salami and the mezuzahs. When my father went to Russia in the 70s, then it was before everyone was popular to go to Russia. In 72, it wasn't common to go to Russia. Later, everyone started going 10 years before communism fell. And the Rebbe told him to leave your tefillin there. So he comes there, they thought he was a spy. Who brings his tefillin and he's going to leave his tefillin? There's got to be something wrong with him. But he knows too much about Gershon Ber. He had first cousins, people who knew his father, who knew his mother, who knew his grandparents. They grew up together as kids. I can't trick you if I'm an imposter about our childhood. Adults, I could guess. If I started telling him about days in LA in the 80s, he's going to know right away if I'm or not. So they say he knows too much. But they thought that tefillin have recording devices in them. This is before technology. So when he fell asleep, he went to take a nap, my father. He went to take a sleep. They were going to check his tzitzis, if he's wearing kosher tzitzis. And the Lubavitcher with chulias, the way we tie them, then we could trust him. They checked his tzitzis and they were kosher and they were correct. But anyway, he left both pairs of tefillin. The Rebbe said to him, I'll buy you new tefillin. There's no tefillin in Russia. Leave your tefillin and I'll buy you new tefillin. Wow. And my father said, I'll leave my tefillin and you don't have to buy me new tefillin. I'll buy myself new tefillin. The Rebbe tried to insist, but it didn't help.
What do you mean leave the tefillin?
Leave the tefillin in Russia for people who don't have. Leave it. That's how you smuggle. The Friedmans, Yossi Friedman, Rabbi Krinsky's son-in-law, and his wife, forget her name. She's a Krinsky, one of the older Krinskys. Shana, maybe. They went also before communism fell. Every year, Russia had to show that they were not communists. The propaganda against the propaganda. It was a very clever system. So they had a book fair, and they invited even religious, even though religion is against the law. They invited Kahas and Merkers came to a book fair in Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe gave the Krinskys a list of which books to take, especially ones that could, and make sure that you don't watch. And you'll see they're all going to disappear because people are just going to steal them. It was the end of book fair. It was about selling books for free. But you give them out, you could do that on Fifth Avenue. In Moscow, so they left, and they would walk around and make believe like they don't notice, and people would steal it. That's how they circulated Tashmish Kedusha. Wow. I'm going to finish off before Maidev, one more story, also about Svarim and Tashmish Kedusha in Alma-Ata, Kazakhstan. Reb Chaim Tashkente comes to America. I don't know what year. I have to ask his kids before I tell the story next time. And he tells the Rebbe, I have regards for you from your father. This was years after his father passed away. He's giving him regards from his father. The Rebbe understood where he's coming from. Right. He says, where did you see him? He says, I worked for the military. And I had to travel all the way to where your father was exiled. But I worked professionally. I was able to do it. He was sent. So when I come to the train station in Chile. I don't know how far. It's not Chile, South America. There's a Chile near Kazakhstan. I would come to Chile, and I see a Blavik. I wasn't dressed like a Frumi Yid. He was. He says to me, "Du bist a Lubavitcher?" The Blavik asks me. Reb Chaim is telling this to the Rebbe. So he says, "Yeah." He says, "Ich darf azefel chumoshim, azefel sidurim, azefel talesim." He made an order. You're working, and you're allowed to come back and forth. No, sister, they check what you're bringing. Don't tell anybody, but this is what I need. And when the next time you come back, or bring it. So the Rebbe asks him, what was he wearing? So Chaim happened to remember. He tells the Rebbe what he was wearing. He says, how did he look? Wearing his gashmis. Then he asked him, how did he look? Like, what was his... So he said, a prince, like a prince. So the Rebbe says to him, why do you say like a prince? Why don't you say like a king? So we're going to daven Maidev in a few minutes, and then we're going to continue after Maidev with the second part, which is the Fabrengen. Okay? Yeah. I just want to tell you, I was taka late, and we lost time. But I really did prepare. Last night I sat for a few hours and I prepared. I brought all my material. Very much. But you see, it doesn't help to prepare and to rush because I came late anyway. Mensch tracht und Gott lacht. We have one more minute till Ma'ariv. I want to tell you one more story.
Oh.
I heard a story from my wife's nephew. He just got married. But he told the following story, a quick story. Then we're going to daven Ma'ariv. Let's see which clock turns to 9:15 sooner. See, that one changed. That one changed at 9:15. That one's still 9:14. See, the solar stays to the Titzach. Al Kapanim, so I'll make the story in a half. 15. Okay, it's Ma'ariv. We'll have to tell the story.
Mayor's coming.
Mayor who?
Kahana.
You davened by the Amid?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what happened. A Litvisher boy who was grew up Jewish and from, he starts walking on the edges, and he's slowly, Tefillin go and Shabbos goes and Kashrus goes, but he gets himself a very good job in a New York office, and he's working with a girl, and one thing leads to another. They don't become right away best friends, but they become friendly, and they go out. They work together. They also play together, and sure enough, it gets warmer. And the chassan says, "By the Shabbat, I guess by Goyim, that's how it works." Because she was a shiksa, she proposed to him. We're so friendly, and we get along so well. We work together. Why don't we get married? So he says, "Listen, I'm Jewish. I don't keep kosher. I don't keep Shabbos. I don't put on film. There's one red line I won't cross, and that's marrying a non-Jew. That I'm not going to do." So she says, and that's one red, but if you convert, I'll marry you gladly. So she says, that's one red line I won't cross. I'm not Jewish, I'm German, and my parents are Nazis. And now they're neo-Nazis. So he said, and that's one line. If I marry a Jew, that's the end of me. And so they continue being co-workers and friends, and every couple of months she again brings up the marriage. He says, "I told you I can't marry a non-Jew, and you can convert." She says, "I can't marry a Jew. My parents are Nazis." One day he has Lubavitcher friends who invite him to Simchas Torah to Brooklyn, to Crown Heights. He's going to the Rebbe. So he tells her, "I'm going to Brooklyn to see a rabbi to dance." She says, "I want to come with you." He says, "It's not for non-Jews and definitely not for German Nazis." She doesn't stop nudging him because, again, she wants to get onto his good side. So he says, "I'll ask my friends." So he tells them the story. And the friends say, "Yeah, bring her along." So she goes to the Vibe section. He goes to the men's section. They dance a whole night. After she comes out. They're going home. She says to him, "I have to meet this rabbi. Call him up and tell him I want to see him." She says, one thing you came to his synagogue is one thing. I doubt he talks to women, and I'm sure not to Goyim, German Nazis. He won't talk to you. She says, "I need to speak to him. He's the man I need to speak to." So he says, "You know what? I'll call my friends." The friends call his friends. The friends call Rabbi Groner. Rabbi Groner says, "Yeah, in 4 months, you have Yechidus." 4 months later, no one knows what's 4 months exactly, but he says all the stories are 4 months, and it was 1:00 in the morning. So maybe it was a little earlier, a little later, maybe not. She goes on Yechidus. He waits outside. They both go to 770. He waits in the waiting area, and she goes on Yechidus. The Rebbe reads her zettel, and she writes, "I work in a office with a Jewish boy. I like him. We're very good together. He won't marry a non-Jew, and I'm German. And my parents are Nazis, and I can't convert." So he looks up to her and says in Yiddish German, "Du bist a Yiddish Meidel." So she says, it repeats the whole story again. Her parents are German, and she's a Nazi, and he's a Jew. So the Rebbe says, "Du bist a Yiddish Meidel, red mit der Mutter. Speak to your mother." So she leaves the office in shock, in dismay. She goes to Rebbe and says, "Are you sure he knows who I am? Because he thinks I'm Jewish and I'm a Nazi." So he knows who you are, the Rebbe. And if the Rebbe told you to speak to your mother, speak to your mother. I would first do what he tells you to do, and then see what happens. So she goes to her mother, and she doesn't know how to bring it up. It's a very sensitive subject, obviously. They hate Jews. So she says, do we have any relations to Jews? We come from Jews. So she starts throwing the plates in the kitchen, and she starts screaming at her and actually hitting her. Right. So she leaves. She tries it again and again a few times. One day she asks her mother again. Her mother starts crying. So now she knew Epis. Mother says, I have to tell you the story. I don't know how you found out, but your father is Jewish, I'm Jewish. We lost all our families in the Holocaust. How did we become German Nazis? We decided after the Holocaust that Chas v'Shalom, it could happen again. So we don't want our children to ever suffer what our brothers and sisters and all our relatives had to go through. So V'meila, we're becoming Goyim. But who says they're not going to find out who we were? So if we become Nazis, then we're going to be saved from the Holocaust, Chas v'Shalom in the future. Now that you found out, go and marry him and live happily ever after. The boy meets the chassan in Eretz Yisrael. He built a Jewish family with frum children. They have frum children. And the boy says, I didn't become a Baal Tshuva because of the Rebbe's miracle, that the Rebbe discovered that a German girl is Jewish. I became a Baal Tshuva because I realized there's a Moshe Rabbeinu in our generation who didn't see a German girl, a daughter of Nazis. He saw her neshama. If there's a person who can see straight through to the etzem, to the essence of a person, this proves that Torah, Moshe Emes with Teras Emes. Let's v'hu rachum David Meir Yeshua, Avram Meir, Ben Chaim Osher HaKoyen. V'hu rachum yichaper Rav v'lo yashkez. You got my message? About you for Shabbos. Change your number, maybe.
How did you send it? The carrier pigeon?
He read the mind, carry your prayer. The mind is about I sent the text. Yeah, but my phone's in the car, so I can't tell you which number I use. I have you on the Ephraim Bolter.
Is your phone?
I have a couple numbers.
Okay. Anyway, my wife and I wanted to invite you. I know it's a little late notice. Do you have your plans for Shabbos already? If not, we'll do it another time.
I know, but we have to make sure Friday night.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's too late, then next time. I'll let you on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Amen.
You were talking about Malachim.
Halva, is it?
Well,
You have halva?
you were talking about Malachim. So how come in the Parsha we see last Parsha the Yitzchak Avinu why he was blind because tears came out from Shemayim. So Malachim they have feelings. They have no feelings. So I mean I understand everything is like a malach came. Everything is beruchnius, but so in Malachim you said before they have Malachim who have. It's a machlokes because I saw the Rambam and Ramban about the goofy, no goofy. Yeah, but
That's a good question.
so where's the tears? I asked a few people, nobody answered me.
First of all, Malachim have a lot of feelings. They have more feelings than we, because they're called chayes.
Yeah, but they're messengers, they're robots. Like you tell me a computer has more than you, yes.
Yeah, but imagine a computer was programmed to have feelings. They have more feelings than seichel. They're chayes. The Av and Yid are very strong, much more than a human being. That's first of all. The problem
so
is
they're not robots, according to you. They got programmed to be a certain way.
But your knowledge of robots are brain robots. What happens if I made a robot heart that has only feelings?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't there be robots that have feelings? The problem is a different one, Achim. By the way, I have regards from your son, Wilkes-Barre. After brain day.
Yeah, I was told about it.
We had a great time.
Just off for a second if you want, and we'll restart it.
End stream, or what should I do?
Yeah, end stream, and we'll restart it.
By the way, I have the same Shiloh from this week. Yaakov was fighting with the Malach. If it's something spiritual, he was fighting spiritually.